Just when we thought Alpine looked like they were on the straight and narrow, this happens. Oh, and this. For a team that has so much rich history and heritage, it's becoming a bit of a habit that consistency is not a word in their dictionary. And after the latest decision of recent races to get rid of Jack Doohan for Franco Colapinto and Flavio taking the reins from Oliver Oakes too, will 2025 be a successful turnaround, or are they writing things off until 2026? Let's get into it. Let's make this clear to start with. Nobody enjoys seeing a team fall from grace, but you have to say, since the middle of 2023, it's been a bit of a bumpy ride for Alpine, and I think that's an understatement, to say the least. Otmar Szafel was dismissed from the team with some internal politics at play going on, and it all unravelled at that Spa weekend, if you remember back to it, with key figures Alan Permain now with Racing Bulls, Pat Fry now as the Williams Chief Technical Officer, all going on their merry way. Then Bruno Faman, their former engine development director and czar, took over the role, heading into a clean slate for the 2024 season. But then it seemed they'd been so distracted by all of what was going on with that and left reeling from what played out at Alpine. They were at the back of the grid and the car was nowhere to be seen when they turned up in Bahrain for the very first race in 2024. And then there's more mid-season turmoil from Bruno Faman, who stepped back from the team principal role, and Oliver Oakes, highly respected in lower formula, took over the role in August 2024, to which things seemed to be the end for this chaos that's ensuing in the team. And in terms of swapping left, right and centre, that seemed to be a thing of the past. And as the season progressed, it looked like they'd got a slight handle on things once again, capped off with a highlight of a double podium at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, followed by a couple of points finishes before the end of the 2024 season. Then Esteban had Haas come call in for 2025 in what seemed like a natural progression for him and the team. He'd been with the team between 2020 and 2024. And so then came the brand new season for 2025. People were excited to see if they could carry this momentum that they had built with such a pleasant finish to the previous season, and a buoyant optimism that rookie Jack Doohan was going to be a stellar replacement for the team alongside the experience of Pierre Gasly. He'd been waiting in the fringes, hadn't he, for a little while with the Alpine team, joining the Alpine Academy in 2022, previously ironically with the Red Bull Junior Driver Program before that. Sadly, it was more of the same for the team, with the current highest finish of a P7 for Gasly in Bahrain, albeit a bit better than last year. And bringing us up to now, it's not really like we're all singing and dancing about Alpine at the moment. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but results speak themselves. Oh, you want to go out? One sec, the cat needs laying out. Hold up a minute. You want to go as well? Alright, you're cool there. Cool.
A few moments later.
Davide Brivio and Marcin Budkowski, co-team principals from 2021 until 2022. And then we had Otmar Szafel from 2022 into the middle of 2023, with highly respected Alan Permain and Pat Fry leaving at the same time, as I said before. Arriving on the scene fairly quietly to the average F1 fan at the time was then Bruno Faman, who was looking to inject his own little va-va-voom into the Alpine project. Then up steps Oliver Oakes because of his credibility in the support formulas with the high-tech team. And then that suddenly becomes untenable, with long-timer Flavio Returns completing the greatest comeback we might have ever seen in the history of Formula One. Well, in terms of like team principals and management anyway. And what about the return of Flavio from his previous spell in the sport, which was showered with success of both Fernando Alonso's world titles at Renault, and known to fans, teams, drivers and the paddock alike, the life and the party of the grid, with more charisma than you could shake a stick at. Do I have a stick somewhere? I've got this pen. There you go. Is there any charisma in there? And up until 2008, everything was going well until the infamous Crashgate at Singapore. How can anyone forget it that's been following the sport for a few years, where Nelson Piquet Jr. was found to deliberately crash to bring out a safety car so Fernando Alonso could take advantage and win the race. That handed Flavio a hefty lifetime ban at the time, but left a big mark on his reputation, understandably. after all of that. But fast forward to 2024, given how badly Alpine were doing at the time, fellow countryman Luca De Meo and president of Renault decided a sprinkling of Flavio was needed to guide the team back on the right path, line him up as an executive advisor. And by my opinion, at this stage, that was kind of signed, sealed and delivered, giving him a second chance, albeit more than 15 years later. I think there was very much the setup beforehand and the vision that he could become the new team principal before long. So then comes the gap opening up to take over from Oliver Oakes, as we know, and Flavio has said, "Grazie mille, don't mind if I do." There'd been chatter around the decision, with some saying since Flavio's been back, he'd been calling the shots or making executive decisions, having influence on the team, and someone like Ollie would be better suited back at the factory running those operations that we now know he is no longer involved with Alpine. And Flavio, given his personality, his somewhat you could say magnetism, he seems to have capitalised on something of a bad situation and consistent run of bad form with the Alpine team. So for now, it says Flavio is acting team principal, but you can't help but feel that might become permanent team principal before long. And put all of what's gone before to one side, is it actually a bad thing that Flavio is back for the team? Albeit it's been a while, but he knows the team structure well and how Renault or Alpine operates. And there are existing relationships from previous times as well, even though it might not be popular amongst everyone in the team, and maybe it is, I don't know. It might give them the direction and steer that team that seemed to have been craving that kind of direction and consistency for so long now. And like any team, Alpine don't want to be sitting around the midfield or even worse on a regular basis with the odd podium here or there or the rare win here or there with Esteban Ocon at Budapest that time. What a magical and incredible race that was. They want to be up there fighting for world titles again. Pierre Gasly has mentioned this more than once in the last year, that his goal of wanting to become a world champion in 2026 with the new regulations when they come into play with Alpine. Talking of Pierre, does the future of their driver pairing look secure to guide this team to the success that they want? Well, from AlphaTauri days, but also, of course, with Alpine, Pierre looks like a solid choice and is going nowhere, cemented by his contract until the end of 2026. But what of that second seat? It doesn't just exist in Red Bull, it seems to be becoming quite a thing in Alpine as well. Because now that Jack Doohan's 5-race spell ran out, hasn't delivered the fruits that Alpine were hoping at the start of this 2025 season. We've moved on to Franco Colapinto, who too seems like to be on a 5-race deal, but Flavio said there's no 5-race limited time about it. We'll just see how well he does. He might go at the end of the season, he might be out sooner than that, and judging on the results so far this 2025 season, you could probably see him in a similar light to Jack Doohan if things don't turn around too soon. The reason for looking into Franco, of course, he did have an impressive first outing in F1 with Williams, of which he's still technically on loan with Alpine from Williams until they want him back in the future. Yeah, I know, it gets confusing. And even though on paper he might not have left a glowing review of his services, 8th in Azerbaijan, 10th in Austin, he left everyone feeling that he had that magic about him and that extra something special, that he was able to get up to speed relatively quickly in the Williams before he jumped ship to Alpine. And let alone the visual comparison to the one and only Ayrton Senna. I mean, they've got a point. Every time I see this photo, it's just like uncanny and bizarre. It's definitely Senna in another life. But there's a bit of an open admission now within the team and the press, isn't there, that 2025 is being used as a kind of X Factor talent competition to see who could be in the best place possible for that seat in 2026. Whether this remains to be Franco Colapinto, we'll just have to see. It needs to remain in races or the rest of the season to prove himself. And then another Alpine Academy start, maybe in Paul Aron. Officially a reserve driver, could equally make a debut if Franco doesn't cut the mostaza. And unfortunately, he's not been setting the world alight so far. 15th, 13th and 16th in his first few races for Alpine. It's not really the start that Franco would have wanted, and definitely doesn't match up to kind of the feeling maybe they had about Franco in those performances for Williams last season. So with the driver situation seemingly settled or unsettled, depending on kind of what bias persuasion you have at this point with Alpine and the drivers, is the future finally looking bright, unwavering and positive for Alpine? What about Flavio? Any publication I read at the moment, like looking at this one here, has him down as acting team principal. But you do have to ask yourself, what is the future goal of Alpine? Or maybe better known to be the long-term F1 fan as Renault. Any team or manufacturer is in the sport 9 times out of 10 to promote that brand across an international stage. Whether you're Mercedes, whether you're Red Bull, whether you're Sauber, soon to be Audi, you get the picture. It is a brilliant global stage to get our everyday car brands out there and for people to go, hey, I've got an extra $500,000, I'm going to go buy a Ferrari, or I'm going to go and buy maybe more closer to a Mercedes. When Alpine take on Mercedes power units for the 2026 season and beyond, we know that now, you have to ask yourself what the relevance of Renault is being around in the sport. Okay, yeah, they'll be developing other technologies and innovations within the team, and therefore the automotive world, it goes back to the everyday kind of thing. But it strikes in the face, doesn't it, that the team's original purpose seems to be dwindling all the more in terms of actually having the Renault and Alpine badge in there. Hopefully I'm wrong and time will tell. Well, let's hope come 2026 that Alpine, taking the brave choice to switch to Mercedes power, having the equivalent of a driver X factor this year and a steadying of leadership at the top, no matter how controversial you might find it, that Alpine might soon turn a corner in the sport. And after all, it would be nothing short of what Flavio wants to recreate from all of those halcyon days years ago. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think of what we've said in this video? Let me know in the comments below and we'll carry it on after the video. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.